Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I can see there are people from many different countries here today. So thank you very much for being with us today. We're talking about a very important issue of hybridization, how you can use CSP and PV in order to provide firmness to your grid and to avoid a few of the issues that you start having once you have a lot of variable renewable in your system. And with me today, I am very pleased to have not only 3 experts, but also 3 old friends who are not old. We've just been friends for a long time. I just want to make sure that I point this out, who are going to tell us today what's going on, what is the latest really in the status of certain projects that they've been working on. So I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves in case you don't know them, which I'm sure you do, but just in case. So first, can I ask Manuel, please, could you introduce yourself briefly so that people can get to know you?
Hi, this is Manuel Millán Sanchez. I'm a senior engineer working in the World Bank in the energy practice in Africa and MENA. So I'm mainly focused on developing projects, renewable projects throughout the continent, and participating in all the portfolio from the World Bank that we have there. Thank you.
Excellent.
And welcome to everyone.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you for being here with us today. Next, I'd like to invite to speak and to introduce himself, Abderrahim, someone that you know well, I think. Abderrahim, please, if you can introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm Abderrahim Jumrani. I am the engineering director of MAZEN, the Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy. We have been active during the last 34 years in the energy sector. In electricity, but also in fuels, and happy to join this meeting.
Thank you very much, Abderrahim. And last but certainly not least, Oliver, please, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Belen. Good morning to everybody here in this webinar. My name is Oliver Bautzon. I'm the managing director of TSK Flaxel in Germany, being since more than 30 years a pioneer in the CSP sector, and today belonging to Spanish TSK group, being widely known in the sector.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is why consider CSP and PV if you have the solar resources to add firmness to your system, because there are many things that you can do, but probably if you have the right solar resources, this would be the most economical and the better for your system. But I'm going to let the experts actually talk about that. I'd like to ask Manuel, please, if you could start sharing your screen and preparing whilst I tell you guys in the audience how we're going to work today. And today what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 presentations, Manuel, Abderrahim, and then Oliver, and then we'll take questions. If you can send your questions, please, through the Q&A here at the bottom of the screen. It just makes it easier for us to manage it, and we'll take them at the end. And use the chat to introduce yourselves. A lot of you have already, and I am pleased to see that we have people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Morocco, from Italy, from Spain, from Malaysia. It's amazing to see from Portugal. So welcome, everyone. A lot of your countries are in areas where you could really use CSP. So we're glad that you're here, and we hope that we can help you. Also, thanks to the people who've joined via YouTube. I see there is a bunch of you. Please send your questions there if you like to, and we will try and take them over to the speakers over here. We're recording this session, and we will send you a link to the materials and the recordings in case you want to study them further. And without further ado, Manuel, please go ahead. Make sure you take the mute of your microphone so that we can hear you. It's at the top of the screen. Hang on, I might be able to help you. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Now, yes.
Sorry. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can. Yes, yes, okay. We can. Perfect.
Good. Yeah, so hello again to everyone. I'm going to start this presentation by something that it may look a little bit out of the blue, but I think it has a lot of relation with the issue we are talking about. It's about, okay, we are now in a situation that we need a dramatic and unprecedented increase on solar installation in the next 30 years. I actually read an article a few days ago, and it was quite, I would say, shocking for me. That they say that the decrease that we have had in CO2 emission in 2020 with the lockdown of, I would say, the whole world in a lockdown with the reduction on transport. And if we extrapolate that to an annual decrease of CO2, that is exactly what we need to have in a year to year on the next decade to limit to limit the climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this is the size of the challenge that we have now. And for this, we need so many things to do. I don't know if we have time to do that, but among other things, we need to install, this is what Irina has estimated that we need in terms of solar installation in the next 30 years. So we need to multiply by 8 in 10 years, the amount of solar that we are installing, and we need to multiply by 18 then the gigawatts that we have installed in 30 years. So this is huge, this is amazing. And so the challenge that we have now in power system to provide with flexible tools to our power system is just unprecedented. So we need to be innovative. We need to be very, very, very creative in order if we want really to achieve this this challenge, right? So a flexibility power system needs to be very, very flexible now. And this is not only a matter of power system operation, right? This is not, we cannot put all the burden into the system operator. We cannot put all the burden into the planning. We cannot put all the burden. So we need to do flexible generation. We need to solve this situation also from generation point of view. It's very easy now to install cheap PV, cheap photovoltaics at 1 cent. Oh, it's just very, very, very nice to show this breaking these records about building PV at 1 cent, but this is unsustainable, right? We need to think ahead, and we need to do flexible generation. And we have a lot of tools. This is from the International Energy Agency, and we need to do we need to provide flexibility from the VRE, from variable renewable energy. We need to do advanced plant design, and we need also in parallel to install battery storage. We need to install medium-term storage. So we need all sorts of tools in order to provide that flexibility to the grid. In parallel with things like demand-side response, in parallel with regulation and markets, in parallel with modernization of our grids. So there is a lot of things that we need to do in parallel, but one of them is to promote flexible generation. So this is a shift. We need to do a shift in the conception of the renewable deployment. It's not anymore sustainability of the investment. We need to look into the sustainability of the system as a whole. We cannot only look to have a very cheap renewables without looking at system level, because at the end, that will put a burden into the system that is more a cost value proposition for the system rather than simple cost, right? So the output-based approach that need to fit to system needs, I think most of the countries are now shifting to that conception of output-based approach, like for example, Morocco, that Rahim will present later, is more an output-based. That's what the system needs. So the market need to provide me what I need for my system, not whatever, and I will adapt my market to that, right? So the generation need to be adapted to the pressing market mechanism and the need for flexibility. So, and in that sense is where we are working now, mainly in Africa and MENA, and I'm more talking here about the project that we are preparing into the World Bank. And this is more or less the 4 focuses that we have when we are developing projects, and we look that they should be flexible. So they need to be coupled with some kind of storage, either at plant or a system level. It needs to be integrated at a regional level. It may need to make sense at regional level, not only or a national level. It needs to be able to supply a peak demand times, because normally this is an evening times in most of the countries. It needs to be planned. Also, it needs to fit with the long-term planning in terms national or regionally. It needs to follow the output-based approach. Again, the plan should give us what we need to have, not whatever. It should be consequent with the long-term sustainability of the system. Again, it should be affordable, of course, so need to be according to international practice of procurement, transparent process, and need to be mitigated of risk in order to attract private investment and attract international competition, and should be sustainable from a local point of view. It needs to develop local capacity, and it needs to be optimized from operation and maintenance. So I put here a roster of things that we are, for example, now doing in I would say this is mainly focused on MENA and Africa. We are doing all of these projects now in different levels of preparation, implementation, even construction, some of them. All of them, they follow this approach. So I think this is the approach we are at least we are going now, because I think that's the approach that is sustainable for the system, and we need to look at that. So we have the solar, of course, the solar complex in Morocco that we are talking in this, that Rahim will talk later. We have solar plus storage in Central African Republic. You see that here it's also all kind of country, right? We have countries that are very even fragile countries, or countries that are in developing countries, or countries that are already very well developed, right? So we have Morocco, we have Central African Republic, the Gambia, Tanzania, Morocco, Maldives. We are doing solar parks at the regional level in the West Africa Power Pool, specifically in Burkina, Mali, and Gambia. We are doing planning support in order to see what's the best solar fit for purpose in Tunisia and Jordan, in Namibia and Botswana. We are also helping the governments in South Africa, India, China for grid connected storage in order to integrate more solar into their system, and many other places where we are working with this approach, right? And this is financing coming from Clean Technology Fund or the resources, the resources from the bank that are IDA or IBRD. So going specifically to PV and CSP, PV and CSP is one of these tools, one of these, I would say, innovative solution that represent a very flexible, clean option from a power sector perspective, because we have 3 different technologies: CSP with molten salt, of course, storage. We have PV. We can have also batteries. It can be this. Some of them can be dispatched, some other cannot. But at the end, we will end up with a solution that is dispatchable solution, that it has a medium investment cost and a very low. Sometimes I think it will evolve to a very low LCOE. Now I think it's a low COE, and this will remove the burden from system operations perspective. Now I put here these 2 charts in terms of show now. Okay, we are building, let's say, in the left approach, let's put everything into the power system and let the system operator deal with all of that, right? I think we are now shifting towards a approach more similar to the right one, which is let's give to the power system what the power system needs, and let's remove that burden, because the challenge we have in front of us is so huge that we cannot actually just put megawatts without any planning inside, right? And we have to demand to the demand supply balance. So summarizing and trying to respond to the title of this webinar, PV-CSP may accelerate transition to renewables with a solution that has these 4 features: offer total flexibility for facing this sustainable solar expansion, very challenging solar expansion. It reduces pressure on the system operation. It simplify and cut down the prices of installation and O&M, because at the end you are optimizing the investment, right? Because you are sharing many of the facilities, and it increases cost value proposition of the solar energy. It's not only just cost; it's also value for your power system. And with this, I think I did in less than the time I was requested.
You did, Manuel. That was really, really quick, but also really interesting. You went into a lot of detail, so thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing so that I can ask the next speaker, which is Rahim, to share. And there are already 3 questions, so clearly you guys have a lot of questions. And there are a lot of people sharing what they're doing, and a lot of interesting comments. You guys make sure that you tag all attendees so everyone can read it, because otherwise only us, the panelists, can read it. And there have been some very interesting comments in the chat, so just bear that in mind. Rahim, if you can take your microphone off the mute. It's at the top of the screen. There's like a, there you go. And now just put it in presentation mode. Perfect.
Thank you very
You're ready
much.
to go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Belen. Thank you for allowing me to share what is happening in Morocco. First, I will just present a little bit Mazen, who, for people who doesn't know, we are the Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy. We are in charge of developing and operating renewables in Morocco. The objectives of Morocco were 42% of renewables by 2020. We reached nearly 39. We don't reach the 42%, but objectives are here just to push the maximum. And if we didn't fix 42%, we would stay at 25%. So 39 is very good ratio. Now the objective for 2030 is 52% of renewables in Morocco, and we think really that we will be able to reach it. In order to develop the renewables in Morocco, Mazen was created by ULAW with a clear framework. I think that a lot of people know about it, and you will have the presentation, so I will not pass a lot of time to present it. There are agreements between the government, the utility, and Mazen in order to develop the projects in a clear manner. That's our first grid solar complex, which is under operation. The Ouarzazate Noor complex, with its 4 power plants and an R&D platform. 3 are CSP power plants, Nor 1 and Nor 2 parabolic trough, and Nor 3 tower power plant. They are under operation now. All the power plants are under operation now. And now, what about our subject? What is going on in the electrical system? It is, I'm taking the example of Morocco, but I think that it is it can be the case of a lot of countries. What are we doing now? In reality, we are really pushing PV and wind into a grid that has been constructed during the last century. This manner to produce to generate electricity during the last century was based on fuel, on fossil fuels, and it means that in front of demand that is variable, you have generation that is stable. You can generate when you want using gas turbines or steam turbines or any else, using coal, nuclear, gas, or fuel oil to generate electricity. It is clear that we can push, but until a limit. We cannot continue to push anyway renewables inside such system. And at the moment, the technical limits of the existing fossil fuels power plants will push us to stop developing renewables or to stop the fossil fuels power plants, and we will have to choose. And I think that now in 2021, that is a discussion that is being between electricians all over the world. We think from our side that until now, renewables was replacing energy, and we could develop PV and wind. But from now, we have to change our mind and first to stop developing fossil fuels. We think that is the choice. And what can be the solution if we do? We analyzed in Morocco, what can we do with just PV and wind? It is intermittent renewables, it is intermittent energy, so which means that we are just giving energy, we are not guaranteeing any capacity. And with a good mix on regional basis and technology basis, we could reach until 80 or more than 80% of what we call useful energy, which means that if you are producing 100% of the needs, 80% will be corresponding to demand, while 20% should be curtailed, and of course 20% of demand should be shall need other means to be satisfied. If we continue to use fossil fuels just for 20%, I don't think that any nuclear power plant or any coal power plant could compete. 20% of capacity factor is so low for such power plants that it means that it is not possible to compete. So if we are choosing to develop PV and wind, we will have to find other solutions in order to be able to satisfy whole demand while maximizing renewables into grid, and while maximizing renewables with the lowest cost, which is now PV and wind in the grid. So the first thing is what I explained. It is the synergies between the technologies and sites, which allow to reach a high useful energy. And then we will need storage. And when we talk about storage, which is the best solution from our side, 20% of needs is very low, but with storage we can respond to it. During our study, we could see that we need a lot of different technologies of storage, because you will need to manage the hourly intermittency. You can have wind that disappear during, let's say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and you will have to respond to such demand to respond to it. And for this, we think that the battery is the best solution now. Now you can need just storage to respond peak demand, and which is can be 3, 4, or 5 hours. And for this, battery can be the solution from our point of view if you need it of not a lot of time, let's say 2, 3 hours now. Yeah, battery can compete, but more than this until now, battery cannot compete. And you can use hydro pumped storage if you have the sites to receive hydro pumped solutions, or thermal storage. And thermal, when we talk about thermal storage, that means that it is CSP. Moreover, if we need more than 5 hours, because with hydro pumped storage, they are really competitive when you are using it between 4 and 6 hours of storage, taking into account our simulations. And now, if we need more than 6 hours, let's say 8 hours, 10 hours, 12, and even 15 or 16 hours, thermal storage will be able to respond, which means you are covering all the daily intermittencies. Now, finally, we will have also seasonal intermittencies. And for this seasonal intermittencies, if you are generating electricity by using more PV, you will generate more during summer, not only because you have sun, but because the day is longer, and you will generate more PV. But you will need electricity during winter. And if it is wind, during winter you have more wind, but not only, you have also a high air density, because the temperatures are low, which means that you are producing more energy with wind during winter. And during summer you will need also to store. So for this, we think that at least in Morocco, we don't need it until now, but in the next 10 to 15 years, we can need it, and hydrogen can be the solution. Just here to say, and I will after just give one word on middle, just here to say that during the 20th century, we have in our grid nuclear, coal, gas, and even fuel oil. And we didn't ask ourselves why we are developing all these power plants. We were developing coal with let's say 4 to 5 cents of dollars per kilowatt hour, while we were developing at the same time fuel oil with 20 to 25 cents of euros per kilowatt hour, which is very high. Why were we developing different technologies? Because the needs were not the same, and we are developing a mix of generation of electrical generation to respond needs. And from the moment these needs are not the same, we will need to develop the maximum of technologies that will allow us to respond demand. Of course, if from one need, two technologies are in competition and one is better, we will choose this one. But until now, we think that for storage, at least there is a lot of synergies between the four solutions we know now. I'm sure that we will have other solutions that could be developed during the next years, and they will come to compete with this one. But from the moment, at least now, the four technologies that are enough mature now are this one and could respond demand. At the same time, PV, wind, and hydro will allow to give the maximum of energy. What is happening? What was the middle project? Middle project was constructed under these conclusions, because when we launched middle by 2015, I think, the battery storage was at $500 per kilowatt hour, which means that meant that it was not competitive anyway, and it could not compete with thermal storage. And when you need an hydro pumped storage in Morocco, you have the potential, you have great potential, but you need at least 8 years to develop an hydro pumped storage. So the middle was the best solution. We are using PV during day and CSP during night, thanks to thermal storage. And the cost that we could reach are very, very interesting. It is a plant that will be generating from 7 in the morning until midnight, which means that it is replacing, let's see, CCGT power plant, and the reached cost in our region with the gas of $7 per million BTU will immediately be lower. The cost lower to the cost of fuel only, not the power or the cost of the electricity. The last one is Middle 2. The RFP is now ready to be launched, but we will decide on the moment of launching it, taking into account the impacts of COVID. And for this, we are making it open to let it competing between for storage between batteries and CSP storage. From my side, I think that until now, CSP storage will win because it is more competitive than continue to be more competitive than batteries. But we will see. I hope that the impacts of COVID-19 on demand will not be this high, and that will allow us to launch this power plants in the next months, and we will have the answer next year. Thank you for your attention. I'm ready to answer all questions. I hope that it was good for time.
It's perfect. Thank you very much. And guys, you guys are doing so well. You're ahead of time. So thank you very much, Abdurrahim. There are a few questions already for you and about Midelt. So don't worry, you're not gonna get bored, right after the presentations. So next, I'd like to ask Oliver to please also share your screen and give your presentation. There's a few questions already that are open. You guys can take a look, and then we can discuss some of them, if you like. Perfect. Okay, we can see you. Can we hear you, Oliver?
I hope so.
Yes, perfect.
Right
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for these two interesting presentations. I want now to add on EPC contractors and technology providers' view on the hybrid topic, and to share with you where we see this technology being today and where potential future deployments can head to. For all those who do not yet know TSK, we are EPC and technology provision company with a long track record, almost 4 decades, with 1,000 people, interesting balance sheet, active worldwide, and not only in CSP, but also in other renewable energies, in conventional energies, and many other parts of the industry. When it comes to CSP technology, we can show up with a significant market share today. Out of approximately 6 installed gigawatt worldwide, we have been significantly involved in more than 1 gigawatt, and that makes us certainly one of the leading companies in this sector. So now, speaking about hybridization of CSP with PV. We have first of all to understand that there are 2 principal approaches here. The first being a simple co-located one, where a CSP plant runs fully independent of a co-located PV plant. When we talk about hybrid systems, we talk about the more sophisticated, fully integrated concepts, where we have an integrated power plant deploying both technologies. And that is what you can see here. We have here on the left-hand side the conventional parabolic trough power plant, the solar field. This is bringing first amount of energy, if you want, to this molten salt, which is coming here from this molten salt storage. Then the molten salt preheated like this is sent to an electrical heater. And here we collect PV energy, which is in excess to being sent to the grid. So we send a bulk quantity of PV to the grid, but the excessive part of the PV we cannot absorb in the grid. We use it here to overheat the salt and to bring the salt to another temperature level. And then the salt is brought to a steam water cycle and can be electrified at whatever time it is needed. And the effect of taking into the CSP hybrid system additional PV power has mainly 2 effects. Due to the overheating of the salt, we increase the delta T between the cold and the hot salt level, and with that we increase the storage, or otherwise round, you could make it smaller and cheaper. And the second effect is that due to the higher temperature level, here this conventional water steam cycle is getting much more efficient. And with these 2 main figures, we have a very interesting system which can provide very competitive low cost. Yeah, we are below grid parity in many countries, and we think we can get in the next projects even cheaper and deploy this technology in a much wider application. So here, what you can see here is a graph where we show over the peak ratio, coverage ratio, the LCOE of different systems. The peak coverage ratio is to be understood as the ability of a system to deliver energy to whatever time it is required. And the higher the peak ratio, the more flexible the system is. And we see, of course, here very cheap energy coming from PV, but having a very low peak ratio coverage because it's not flexible. We have here the top part, a system which is a simply co-located plant where CSP is simply co-located to PV. Yeah, we have also a very attractive peak ratio coverage, but we are quite high in LCOE. And here we have the range of different Icph systems, integrated CSP PV hybrid systems, where we have here the blue. This is calculated simply LCOE optimization, what you can see. And the yellow is a system from the optimum where we have applied certain operational strategy improvements, and then we can even go to almost 100% of peak ratio coverage, far beyond 90%. Yeah, and that is the difference between co-location, integrated systems, and non-flexible systems. What we can see here in this picture is a process of design optimization of a hybrid plant. What you are doing usually is that you fit for the purpose, meaning from the required peak ratio coverage, meaning more or less the size of the storage, you start designing a CSP plant, and then you start adding on certain amounts of PV, what you can integrate into the system. And if we take here the yellow line, the more PV you add into the system, the cheaper is getting the overall LCOE of the system. But at a certain moment, if you continue adding PV, it's getting more expensive again. And this process you repeat then for different CSP power plant sizes, and you will always find a minimum. And if you then translate all the minimums of the different lines to a new graph, you can see that there is a certain total optimum for a given purpose, for a given power plant designed. And the interesting thing here is that a minimum amount of CSP is required to reach that optimum, LCOE optimum in the hybrid system. And it is easy to understand, the more PV you inject into the system, the more you have finally dumping of PV, you're wasting energy. And if you do not have enough energy, you are missing potential to cheap plant PV into the system. Yeah? And here you can, of course, in increasing the CSP portion, you can gain dispatchability, but you have to pay for it. And if you lower it too much, specific costs are rising and you are leaving the optimum LCOE range. So one of the most popular and upcoming applications for CSP in our view is the hydrogen industry. This is a very famous topic, not only in Germany but and in Europe, but also all over the world. And we believe that particularly the CSP-based PV hybrid systems have a perfect fit to run into that industry to serve this power plant technology. And first of all, we have to state that we need to allocate to each new capacity of hydrogen generation a directly allocated green energy source. If you don't do so, we will deprive each and any system from renewable energies, and we would work against any energy transition. So, and if we have to add one, we should, of course, add a reliable system at attractive cost. And we believe that an Icph system, an integrated CSP-PV hybrid system, can do so. If we tune that system, we can achieve over the year more than 8,000 operational hours. Not 100% full load hours, but operational hours at least at 50 to 70% of the load. And with that, we can guarantee a very secure process in production, and we can make best use of the invested capital into the electrolysis plant. A very particular asset of CSP-based technologies is the ability to extract thermal energy. If you think about the most recent developments in electrolysis technology, the high temperature electrolysis technology, consuming directly steam power, this can very cheaply and most competitively delivered by CSP technology. And then, of course, aside all these assets, we can provide grid services, and such as frequency stability, and also the participation in some reserve power markets. And one of the very famous and important assets of the technology is the ability to serve very strongly local content. And then these systems are well known for its long lifetimes and lifespans. Some systems are running now for almost 50 years in the market. Here is no use of critical materials foreseen. Everything can be recycled. And as we have shown with our TSK bit together with our partners in Morocco, we can achieve very attractive cost levels. And this Moroccan project, middle one, being the first of this type, being so attractive already, we believe that in future times we can even undergo this price and cost level. Here you can see the integration of Icph system into a hydrogen industry. We have here the sun and the power plant producing electricity and heat and sending it to all the consumers here, starting with the electrolyzers, generating the hydrogen, also supplying process heat to process consumers. In this case, we have selected a cement plant, which is one of the most strong CO2 emitters. We capture here the CO2 and send the hydrogen and the carbon dioxide to a methanol plant to produce e-fuels, which can then be sold to the local market. Just as an example, how Icph concepts can be deeply integrated into industry. And now I want to finalize with a future outlook of what can also be possible in future times based on integrated CSP-PV hybrid systems. You all have certainly heard about virtual power plants where you have a kind of pooling of different power plants acting as a whole, a virtual power plant. And this technology can also be used in such a context on grid level. So that means the hybridization in future times can be done on grid level. And to understand it a little bit more, I have prepared these pictures here where we on the upper left-hand side can see a typical generation curve of PV. And we have here the peak power of PV. We have here the AC level where up to which the inverters operate. That means always in a PV plant, this topping is lost. So we can only produce up to this level. But now we could imagine that we define here a second level, a planned curtailment level, saying that everything below here is sent directly to the grid as a very cheap bulk energy. Here cut very stably without too much intermittence. And here the upper part, where, by the way, statistically the strongest intermittence is placed, we could take it off and send this part to the storage. And if we make this gray corridor very small, we do not take a lot of energy from this PV power plant. But if we take a lot of PV power plants like this, we can send a required and enormous amount of PV energy to the storage of the CSP system. The same could be done here with wind. Yeah, it's the same logic, a part being directly sent to the grid and the upper part being used to charge the storage. And then we can finally to a system where we have here a pool of manifold power plants which are in a small amount sending via the grid energy to the storage. Of course, there needs to be a sophisticated control and communication in this virtual power plant, but this energy is sent to this system, whereas the bulk energy is sent cheaply to the grid. And here from this system, we can then in a very dispatchable and planned manner return electricity back to the grid whenever it is needed, either in the night or to boost demand times during the day where there is not enough other energy available. And with that very future-oriented vision, I want to conclude my presentation and thank you for your attention. I hope this last presentation was not too technical and you could enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. We had a spurt of questions for you as well based on your little graphs. So if you take that off the screen now, and I will ask the speakers to please send the presentations to us so that we can put them in the materials and everyone can enjoy them again and get in touch with you if they have any questions or there's any further business. So I'd like to ask you guys, and this is a question for all of you, so anyone can take it as you wish. The first I'd like to ask is the question that I suppose is now the elephant in the room. I can't believe I'm saying this because 2 years ago, I would be considered an heretic for saying this, but there is a question here of whether removing the power block altogether and having, just PV and thermal storage would be actually better economics than actually having CSP. And as I'm saying, like 2 years ago, no one would believe, that PV with thermal storage would even work in any stem of the imagination. I can't believe we've turned around that omelette and now we're actually having to argue the opposite. So Abdelrahim, do you want to start this? Essentially the question is, in Midelt and other power plants, if you were to take the CSP portion out and just use PV and thermal storage, would that not be more economic?
Let's say it's not an easy question, and in general, we prefer to refer to the market to decide what is the best, the more competitive solution. Now, the competition, I think, is between thermal energy production for CSP and PV generation. If we can produce the thermal energy at a lower cost than the costs that are reached now by PV, I think that there is no competition between them. Otherwise, yes, there will be competition. And in general, for CSP, I think that the CSP is not only the concentration of with mirrors, of energy on receivers. It is also the storage solutions and all the technologies that are for storage solutions and the steam turbine also. It is important. So I cannot say what will be the market. We cannot imagine. It is not easy to say how the market will evolve in the next years. But until now, we think that we can need resistances to ameliorate, let's say, the efficiency of the CSP power plant, but we will continue to need to develop CSP.
I'm going to have to ask if any of you, either Manuel or Oliver, have anything to ask. Oliver, I think you're ready. Your microphone's, so go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. I have shown this graph, and as a result, there is still a certain amount of CSP required to reach CSP LCOE minimum. And this will also be true in future. You simply have to imagine what you can save if you say, I want to abolish the CSP part. You only can abolish the solar field. You have to maintain the storage, and you have to maintain the heaters, you have to maintain the power block to re-electrify the energy. And so if you abolish and eliminate the CSP part, you have not a lot of savings. And what we still see is that we can generate the heat more cheaply with CSP, and that is also in future the main driver to maintain CSP in the system.
Okay, Manuel, do you have anything to add, or can I move along to the next question? Go ahead.
No, I would say, I mean, I tend to, I mean, from an economic point of view, I agree with Oliver. I think that what's the point to have to convert electricity into, I mean, from an engineering point of view, to convert electricity into heat, to convert the heat into electricity, the round trip efficiency will be much worse that you have with a battery, for example. It should compensate the price of the battery versus the price of thermal storage, should compensate this difference of round trip efficiency. And given the price that the battery are getting, I doubt that this will have sense.
Yeah, I mean, but 2 years ago, this converting electricity into heat, I remember people correcting me. I was trying to look for people to speak in webinars at the time, 2 years ago, maybe. People were correcting me, but you made a mistake. You didn't mean electric energy to heat. That's wrong. That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, no, this is what I'm looking for. And I can't believe that, like 2 years only, people are completely convinced that that's the way forward. So we'll see. I'll let you guys. So there are 2 questions here that come up time and time again, if you've been reading through them. So one is more for you, Abdurrahim, and it's about the status of Midelt, what's happening. Are you starting to, I think you responded to that partially, but it keeps coming up. So I think if you want to refer to this, particularly says, is the project going to be built? So you want to take your microphone off so that you can answer?
Yeah. Okay, I hope so. I am working for, so yes, for Midelt 1, I think that there is no problem. We are on the financial closing of the project. For Midelt 2, I don't know. We will wait, as I said, to have the impact of COVID in demand, and the impact seems to be high. So the utility is planning the needs for the next 10 years, and we will see when when COVID will be after us and when this plan will be there to decide. So I cannot see for Midelt 2, but for Midelt 1 for sure, I think that we will construct it in the next. We are just waiting for the financial close of the project.
So may begin construction in 2021, this year?
As I said, I hope so. I cannot, it is not a simple technical decision. It is much more than this. All decisions on investments are more than just technical now in Morocco, but I don't think that we are. It is only the case of Morocco, yeah. So I hope that we will be able to begin the construction this year, or even if we can begin it the beginning of the next year, it will be fine. But I think that we will construct the first power plant.
Yeah, I can imagine it's so much more complicated in many ways. I mean, if only Manuel could talk openly about how complicated those things are, but since he can't, I'm not going to ask him. Next question is, I think, more for you, Oliver, but it's a question that comes up 2 or 3 times and it's about the electric heaters. This plane here, is one of the more critical components in this hybrid plants. People are saying it's no big deal, but what are these things? How expensive are these components? How well do they work? Where do you get them from? Are you a manufacturer? There's a lot of questions in this sort of line. So what do you have to say about those heaters, Oliver?
Well, we start from the principle that the CSP hybrid plant is deploying exclusively proven technologies. We have a track record of CSP technology with the mirrors. Even the towers are running sometimes meanwhile. And we have the PV, which has a perfect track record over the world. And we introduced now newly the electrical heaters into the system, which is a combining element between PV technology and CSP technology. And the electrical heaters are used in chemical industry for 100 years, and they are common, proven, available technology. There is not only one bidder in this world. There are preferred bidders, of course, and more specialized, but there are a huge quantity of bidders available. And this is not a frightening process element. We have this under control, of course. What is new here, we have to make interact a higher number of heaters in a parallel and a serial way. And this is a certain control matter, but that is not rocket science. That is something which is also done in other industries already. So from our perspective, it is a manageable engineering issue.
Okay, a question for you from Luis Crespo, or for you guys. He says, essentially in your graph, the graph that you show doesn't seem to be accounting for the effect of actual tower plants. So he says, don't think that a CSP power plant can provide the same two effects, delta T at the storage and high turbine efficiency at a much lower cost than a parabolic trough plant plus PV modules and inverters and electric heaters, but a lower cost. I guess the graphs that you've shown applies only to hybridization of parabolic trough plants and not towers. Is that correct?
It is correct that the graphs I was showing were derived from investigations based on parabolic trough. However, the principle will remain similar, but the LCOE will shift to a smaller portion of PV. And yeah, and of course the height will be different. But in principle, you also can combine tower systems with PV. But it is true in these cases, the potential to integrate and to overheat is limited because we are already running tower systems at high level. And then, of course, you have to see whether hybrid with a tower is an attractive solution, of course.
Okay, so Luis is just making here saying the heating salts with heliostats is 2 to 3 times cheaper than doing the same with PV and electrical heaters. And he says this is a fact. You know, I don't know, I just want to say it and leave it there. So the next question I have for you guys is, please feel free, like I want to ask you one more question about the hydrogen thing, because everyone's talking about hydrogen. You're right, you know, it's very hard to avoid. But then after that, you know, pick whichever question you guys want, and you can answer it because there is a few still open, like 17, and they keep going up. We're not going to have time for that, but we can answer this hydrogen one, and then you can answer whichever you like. So take a look. And on the hydrogen, I don't really know, at the moment, what is the best approach for this. I have extensively researched renewable hydrogen, and seems like some people are going from the point of 8,000 hours, what you say, Oliver, and therefore they need reliable renewable energy. And even if you take alkaline technology, even more so, it does seem to go the CSP way. However, then there are other people that are saying, no, electrolyzers are not all that expensive. Run it 2,000 hours, and just run it at sort of peak PV super chip, and just make the electrolyzer larger. So I fail to see whether there is a clear engineering bit that says, yes, this is what's going to happen, or whether there are like hundreds different right now ways of looking at this technology. So I just wanted to open it up and say, do you really think that the development of renewable hydrogen leads to the development of sort of CSP for that sort of to be able to have reliable renewable energy? Or will this change geographically? May there be another sort of engineering approach? So I leave it up to you guys to answer however you like. Whoever wants to start, just open your microphone. Oliver, go ahead.
Maybe I can start discussing on that. I think that is a very new field of activity, and it is an open race. Nobody knows where it is really going to. The electrolysis technologies are developing. We have alkaline electrolysis, we have high temperature electrolysis, we have the PEM electrolysis. So all of them having particular features and cost, and they are all under strong evolution. Yeah? What we believe, however, is that it is of the essence to have reliable power, and we have to calculate correctly. When I see calculations where 24 hours a day, 3 euro cent PV power are injected into electrolyzer systems, that is not the truth. Yeah? And maybe it is even competitive to run electrolyzer systems for 2,000 hours, what is then feasible with PV, for instance. That's fine, but each equipment which is only used, let's say 20% of its operational potential time, that is not an optimal use of its invested capital. Yeah? So the more you can extend the operational hours, the better it is for the economics of the overall system. And here you have, of course, to make somehow the analysis project by project, whether it is more attractive to run, let's say, 8,000 hours at 6 euro cent, what we could do with a Icph system. Or if you can only do it into 2,000 hours at 2 or 3 euro cent. Yeah? So that is something where you have to make your project specific analysis, and we will of course have to see how prices are developing of these different technologies and how we can get the price from the CSP PV hybrid system.
So my understanding was that electrolyzers actually had a life cycle of 15 years, and by actually 15 years-ish, and by actually reducing the amount of hours that you can actually run them for longer. But I may be wrong. This is just, what people have been commenting. Abderrahim, I wanted to ask you guys in Morocco have a big hydrogen, ambition. So, how are you looking at this from the renewable perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that yeah, we began to look at hydrogen 3 or 4 years ago, and we are making some studies with some companies, private companies, but also with the World Bank to analyze what can we do with hydrogen. I never think that there is one solution for anything. I think always that the solution will depend on the need. So for hydrogen, it is, from my point of view, also the case, because if you are, it will depend on what will you do with hydrogen? If you are producing hydrogen to have it on a pipeline, gas pipeline or hydrogen pipeline, and you are free to have the quantity you want when you want, no problem. You can use the 2,000 hours, 3,000 hours with the wind or PV power plant without any problem. If you have also a salt cavity at disposal, you can also do it. So you can store hydrogen and it will not cost a lot, and it is the best solution in this case. But if you are aiming, for example, to produce ammonia, Haber-Bosch will need a flat flow of hydrogen, so it will not be possible to produce hydrogen for 2,000 or 3,000 hours. You will need, let's say, a base load electricity. It will also depend on the region you are producing. If you are having a great potential of CSP and the cost of electricity from CSP or hybrid PV-CSP is better than, for example, wind and PV with storage, you can use it. Else, the PV plus wind will be the solution. So I think that we are always focusing on one solution to say that's the solution. I don't think that there is one solution, and there is no better solution, no better technology. Technology will be this one, that the best one will be this, that will respond our demand. I aim in this to compare car and airplane. If we are just analyzing cost, we will develop only cars, but we will. I don't know the time that we will need to do robot New York. I even think that it is not possible with the car, but anyway, that's the analysis we have not yet finished our analysis. We are doing detailed studies now for the two first projects with one in Germany and the other with Netherlands. And we hope that at the end of the year, we will have the results of these studies, and that I hope that we will be able to share it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Abdulrahim. Manuel, do you want to add anything to this particular discussion? I know you guys are moving also in green hydrogen a lot.
Yeah, we're moving. Nothing still that can be. I mean, we are working on that. We have already commissioned a report about developing green hydrogen in developing countries. Perhaps I will copy here the link now. But I think I agree with Abdulrahim. At the end, this is not black and white, right? So the future will be a mix of everything. But it looks like we are moving. We are in this so fast environment that we live in everything now, that it seems that things are getting old-fashioned very quick, right? It's like the apps. You know, Facebook is already old, right? So we have to move to Instagram because nobody no. I think this is more serious, right? There is a technology, and technology will last for a long time. It's not that we are moving to hydrogen and forgetting everything, or we're moving to batteries and forgetting CSP. I think the future will be a mix of everything. But I think hydrogen has a future, of course, and it will be a big future. But still not sure about what will be the portfolio in the bank in the next year. I think it's still soon. You know, we work in developing countries, perhaps still a bit expensive for developing countries, very experimental. So it's not a place to play with anything, right? It's a place where they need basic needs, and we need to cover them. Right?
Excellent. Thank you very much. But I mean, there is a lot of buzz right now about this, and you're right. You know, it's not even like Instagram anymore. That's all news. There has been TikTok, Snapchat, and so many others. You know, right now, no one cares if you're not Clubhouse. Have you ever heard of Clubhouse? There is about 1,500 users. So it's one of these things that it seems like we're all moving into this really fast-paced world. So I just want to see, is there any questions that you guys want to answer? We've gone a little bit over time, but if there is anything, because I know there's a few there that are very specific. So if you want to answer any of those, we'll take the time now. Guys, Manuel has just shared with all of you the report, the hydrogen report. And any specific, guys?
Now, some people asking the question about what's the, I mean, if there is any CSP that the bank is working in I read there Jordan, Tunisia, Botswana.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, nothing fixed yet. I mean, we're working with the governments in terms of planning, helping them on planning. At the end, is their decision, but that's what I can say. That we are working with them. Is everything I know, right? We're working with them, helping with them. I know CSP, of course, is feasible. We all know that it's feasible in all those countries. A very good solution, but still is up to the governments, the different governments, to decide whether they won't go for them or not. We are there for helping them.
Thank you very much, Manuel. And there is some moves, but they're probably still thinking about it. We have some people here from Tunisia, so welcome, guys, and remember CSP agenda. And Oliver or Abderrahim, any questions that you'd like to answer?
I'm just scrolling through, but I think most of the topics we have already tackled somehow. I don't find some significant new.
Okay, we'll just leave it there. Don't worry. Makes sense. So thank you very much, the three of you, for being here today. Manuel, Abderrahim, and Oliver. It's been so good to see you. You know, it's amazing. It's like years gone by that we haven't taken a plane or anything. I was actually like a year and a bit ago with Abderrahim in Sacramento. So yeah, time goes fast, and it's good to see you guys, and it's good to see also the people in the audience. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the people in the audience for being here today. I think the biggest takeaway is from today is that there are a bunch of solutions to our problem. The problem that we have, that if we have a lot of variable renewable in the systems break. So we need to, but there is plenty of technologies that can help us in development and already there, as you could see. So take those into consideration. I recently read that the competition body here in Spain, you know, the regulator has said that we need to have like open technology, but renewable tenders. And I think that's really the way for it, you know, to make sure that we pay the lowest price possible, but we are open to whatever solution as long as it works. So I take away your points, you know, about needing a lot of solutions to make it work. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.